Stephanie Pavlons and Cole Havers never knew their lives would collide in a deadly game of secrets and betrayal, but a single hidden letter would expose the chilling truth behind her murder. Stephanie Pavlons had always lived a quiet, organized, and predictable life, which made her sudden disappearance all the more alarming. She was known among her classmates and coworkers as someone who followed routines with almost absolute precision. Each morning she left her apartment at the same time, carrying her neatly arranged camera bag and sketchbook. She rarely missed appointments, responded quickly to messages, and kept her commitments with almost rigid discipline. So, when she failed to appear at an important preparation meeting for her upcoming photography exhibition, the people around her felt an immediate sense of unease. At first, her closest friend assumed she had overslept or become absorbed in editing photos, something that occasionally happened during intense creative periods. But as hours passed without any response, worry settled in like a heavy cloud. By early evening, several attempts to reach her had gone straight to voicemail. Her social media accounts had not been active, and none of her neighbors reported seeing her leave the building that day. One neighbor eventually mentioned an unusual detail. Stephanie's door had been left slightly open earlier in the afternoon. This was something completely out of character for her, as she was known to double-check the lock every time she went out. The neighbor assumed she might have carried groceries inside and forgotten to shut it fully, but after the news of her disappearance spread, the detail felt much more significant. When officers arrived for a welfare check, they entered the apartment cautiously, unsure of what they would find inside. Stephanie's living space appeared undisturbed at first glance. Her bed was neatly made, her breakfast dishes were still in the sink, and her everyday items were arranged exactly as she preferred them. Nothing was overturned, nothing suggested a struggle, and no note had been left behind. Her phone charger was still plugged in, her laptop sat open on her desk, and her camera bag was missing. That absence stood out sharply. She never went anywhere without her equipment. The apartment was silent, but there was an unmistakable hint of paint thinner lingering in the air, something unusual for her home environment. Investigators found no containers or materials that would produce such a smell, making the discovery unsettling. Her car was still parked in its usual spot outside the building, further confirming that she had not gone far. Stephanie's life was built around structure, meaning she would never just vanish without informing anyone. Officers began interviewing neighbors, hoping someone had heard or seen something out of place. A few reported faint footsteps in the hallway at unusual hours the night before, while another recalled hearing a door shut softly, though they couldn't be sure if it belonged to Stephanie's apartment. The limited observations offered no solid direction, but hinted that someone may have entered or exited quietly. As news of her disappearance spread through the community, her professors, classmates, and coworkers expressed disbelief. They described her as cautious, detail-oriented, and focused on her future, with no known conflicts or dangerous associations. Her photography project for the upcoming exhibition had been her main focus, and she had spent the last few weeks visiting various locations around town collecting material. The more investigators learned, the more concerned they became. Everything pointed to the fact that Stephanie had not simply walked away from her life. Something unexpected had happened, something she hadn't been prepared for. And whatever it was, it left almost no trace behind, except for that faint, unexplained scent that hinted at a puzzle far more complex than a routine disappearance. 2 days after Stephanie was reported missing, the peaceful routine of a group of weekend hikers was shattered when they came across something unusual near a forest trail outside town. The area was known for its tall pine trees and quiet atmosphere, making it a common spot for walkers and photographers. As the hikers stepped off the main path to rest near a shaded clearing, they noticed a shape on the ground that did not belong to the natural surroundings. At first, they assumed it was discarded clothing or a pile of fabric blown by the wind. But as they moved closer, the truth became horrifyingly clear. The authorities were called immediately, and the wooded trail quickly transformed into a crime scene, marked by caution tape and investigators searching for clues. The victim was identified as Stephanie Pavlons. She had been placed beneath a group of thick pine trees, as though her body had been positioned there deliberately. It was not hidden deeply in the woods, but placed in a spot where someone on a casual hike would eventually find it. This detail stood out to detectives, suggesting that whoever left her there wanted discovery, not concealment. Her clothing showed faint stains of blue paint, a detail that puzzled forensic experts. The rest of the scene appeared strangely careful. Nothing indicated a violent struggle. No torn fabric, no displaced branches, and no drag marks were present around her. It was as if she had been placed there gently, almost respectfully, yet with cold intention. A closer examination revealed a narrow cut on her wrist, unusually straight, almost too precise to be accidental. The wound did not match common defensive injuries that victims typically show when they fight back. This raised an unsettling possibility. Stephanie may have been caught off guard or incapacitated before she had any chance to react. The cause of death was not immediately clear, and investigators prepared for a full forensic review to determine the exact sequence of events. As officers searched the surrounding area, they noticed only a few signs of recent activity, some faint footprints that seemed to fade into the soft soil and small traces of the same blue paint found on her clothing. This paint was unlike anything naturally found in the forest, and its presence suggested that Stephanie had been at another location before ending up in the woods. The paint thinner scent found earlier in her apartment now held greater significance. It connected her home environment to the crime scene in an unsettling way, as though the same material or person had moved between both locations. The investigators also found that Stephanie's camera, sketchbook, and personal items were not with her. This raised further suspicion, as she rarely left her equipment behind. The absence of those belongings suggested they might contain something someone did not want discovered. Detectives began piecing together the timeline, starting from her last known movements, her planned exhibition, and the locations she frequently visited. The discovery of her body changed the tone of the investigation instantly. What began as a missing person case had become a homicide inquiry with almost no immediate answers. As word spread, fear and confusion rippled through the community. People who knew Stephanie struggled to understand how someone so focused, cautious, and calm could meet such an end. Nothing about the scene provided a straightforward explanation. Instead, it hinted at preparation, intention, and a deeper motive connected to something in her recent life. The blue stains, the deliberate placement of the body, and the lack of signs of struggle all pointed toward a carefully orchestrated act. Investigators knew they had stepped into a case where every detail mattered, and the truth behind Stephanie's final hours would not be simple to uncover. During the detailed examination of Stephanie's belongings, investigators focused on the items retrieved from her apartment and the few personal things still unaccounted for. Her camera bag, which had originally been thought missing, was eventually located behind her bedroom dresser, as though it had been tucked away intentionally. The placement was unusually hidden for someone as organized as Stephanie. When officers opened the bag, they discovered several familiar tools, a spare battery, a cleaning cloth, a small notebook, yet something felt off. One of the inner linings appeared slightly uneven, as if someone had recently tampered with it. A closer inspection revealed a small slit along the seam, barely visible unless one knew where to look. Inside this concealed pocket was a sealed envelope, folded carefully and dated 2 weeks before her disappearance. The envelope was thin, containing a single sheet of paper filled with shaky handwriting. The irregular formation of the letters suggested Stephanie had written it while under stress or fear. The message did not directly mention anyone's name, but several words were heavily underlined, standing out sharply against the rest of the text. Words like blue, night, watch, and behind appeared to form some kind of pattern. The writing hinted that Stephanie believed she was being observed, and that something she had recently come across was not just unusual, but dangerous. She had written that she found something that wasn't meant to be found, and that she felt someone was keeping track of her movements. Investigators immediately sensed the importance of the letter. It indicated that Stephanie had been aware of a threat long before her disappearance. The tone of the note suggested she had tried to warn herself, or possibly someone else, about a discovery she feared would lead to consequences. The fact that she hid the letter inside her camera bag added another layer of suspicion. If she felt unsafe, she might have concealed the message in a place she believed only she would access. The hidden location also suggested she anticipated the possibility of someone searching her belongings. There was also a faint smudge near the bottom of the letter, something that looked like dust mixed with a reflective particle. When examined under stronger lighting, the smudge appeared similar to fine glitter or metallic residue. Investigators took samples for testing, unsure whether it came from Stephanie's own supplies or from another environment. She had been working on mixed media photography, so traces of craft materials were not unusual. Still, the placement of the smudge near her final written line felt significant, almost as if she had dropped the paper onto something moments before sealing it. Another unsettling detail was that the envelope had not been sealed fully shut. The adhesive was only partly pressed down, as though she had been interrupted or had rushed through the process. This gave investigators the impression that Stephanie may have been preparing for something, possibly hoping to leave behind a trail in case anything happened to her. The incomplete sealing could have been a result of panic, hesitation, or someone approaching her unexpectedly. The letter's cryptic nature became the center of the investigation. Every underlined word, every smudge, every irregular stroke in the handwriting was studied. Detectives believed the message was not random. It held references to something Stephanie had witnessed during her recent photography outings. The timing aligned too closely with the date on the envelope. Something she encountered 2 weeks before her disappearance must have triggered fear strong enough to make her hide a written warning. The discovery of the hidden letter shifted the direction of the entire case. It suggested foreknowledge, danger, and the possibility that Steph's death was not a sudden act, but part of a chain of events she had tried to document in her own way. The letter became a key that investigators hoped would unlock the truth about who had been watching her, what she had uncovered, and why she had needed to hide her final message so carefully. When investigators turned their attention to Stephanie's digital camera, they expected to find routine photography, landscapes, artistic angles, and experimental shots for her upcoming exhibition. Instead, they uncovered a collection of images that shifted the case into a more troubling direction. The memory card held a sequence of photos taken in an industrial area on the outskirts of town, far removed from Stephanie's usual artistic locations. Many of the shots seemed ordinary at first glance. Broken windows, rusted metal doors, faded signs, and abandoned structures. But as investigators moved through the images, a clear pattern began to emerge. Stephanie had not simply wandered into the area. She had been observing something specific. A series of photos captured a black SUV parked behind a warehouse with peeling blue paint. The vehicle appeared in multiple images taken on different days, always positioned close to a small side entrance. In one photo, a man could be seen carrying unmarked brown boxes inside the warehouse. His face was partly hidden, but his posture suggested he was moving quickly, as if trying to avoid being seen. Another image showed the warehouse door slightly open, revealing a dimly lit interior with stacks of similar boxes. Although the photos were taken from a distance, they gave the impression of secrecy and urgency. The blue paint on the warehouse door immediately connected to the blue stains found on Stephanie's clothing. It became likely that she had been at this exact location shortly before her death. Investigators hypothesized that she might have visited the warehouse more than once, possibly documenting something she believed was suspicious. Her recent interest in industrial photography could have served as a convenient cover for her real motive, or she might have stumbled onto the activity accidentally and continued photographing it out of curiosity or concern. Other images revealed additional inconsistencies. Several photos captured the same scene at different times of day, suggesting Stephanie had returned repeatedly to observe changes. In one image, a security camera mounted above the warehouse door was turned in a direction that appeared intentionally altered. In another, faint tire tracks were visible near the entrance, matching the pattern of the black SUV's tires. It was clear that Stephanie had been collecting evidence, even if she did not fully understand the danger associated with it. Investigators also discovered a handful of photos that seemed hurried or taken under pressure. These were blurry, crooked, and appeared to be captured while Stephanie was moving quickly. One such photo showed the side of a building with a shadow cast across the wall. The shadow resembled a person standing near her, though the image lacked enough detail to identify who it was. Another photo captured only the corner of a box and a fragment of a license plate, as if she had tried to photograph something important but didn't have time to steady the camera. The presence of these rushed images suggested that Stephanie may have been approached or startled during one of her visits. This possibility aligned with the hidden letter found in her bag, which mentioned being watched and hinted at a person behind her during late-night outings. It became increasingly clear that Stephanie's project had taken her into the middle of something she was never meant to witness. Whether it was illegal activity, secret transactions, or something far more organized, the warehouse photographs were no longer simply part of her artistic work. They were evidence that someone might have wanted to keep hidden. The images raised many questions. Why had the vehicle been present so often? Who was the man carrying the boxes? What was inside the warehouse? And most importantly, had Stephanie been followed after capturing these photos? As detectives connected the warehouse location with the clues from her hidden letter and the paint found at the crime scene, the picture of her final days grew more complex. The photographs were no longer just snapshots. They were stepping stones leading investigators closer to understanding the truth behind her fate. As investigators pieced together the hints from Stephanie's photographs, attention shifted toward the ownership of the abandoned warehouse. Records showed it belonged to a small, privately operated shipping company that had changed management several times in recent years. The most recent owner was a man named Cole Havers, a name that immediately drew interest from detectives. Cole ran a modest logistical service that handled imported goods, claiming to specialize in discounted overseas merchandise. On the surface, his business looked entirely legitimate, but deeper inspection of his financial filings revealed irregularities that had already put him under quiet government observation. The discovery of Stephanie's photographs now placed him at the center of the investigation. Cole's background raised additional suspicion. He had a history of minor offenses, mostly related to aggressive behavior and financial disputes. Nothing on record pointed to violent crime, yet his pattern of offenses suggested someone willing to bend rules when pressured. Investigators learned that Cole had been visiting the warehouse at unusual hours, often long after regular business operations were supposed to end. Security footage from nearby businesses showed his distinctive black SUV entering and exiting the industrial zone at times that matched the timestamps on Stephanie's photos. These coincidences were too significant to ignore. Interviews with people who had interacted with Cole painted a picture of someone unpredictable. Some described him as charismatic in public, but easily irritated when questioned. Others mentioned abrupt mood swings and a tendency to become defensive if confronted about his business practices. A few former employees, who only agreed to speak anonymously, revealed that the company handled shipments that were never recorded properly. They hinted at boxes arriving without documentation and being transported into the warehouse through the same side door Stephanie had photographed. The pattern aligned unsettlingly with what she had captured on camera. As investigators collected more information, they noticed a key connection. The blue paint found on Stephanie's clothing was identical to the shade used on the warehouse as deteriorating metal doors. Forensic tests confirmed the match. This meant Stephanie had been physically near or inside the warehouse just before her death. Combined with the hidden letter mentioning someone watching from behind, the evidence suggested she had been followed or confronted after taking the photos. Suspicion grew stronger when detectives obtained Cole's phone records. They revealed late-night calls around the dates when Stephanie's photos were taken, often lasting only a few seconds, the kind of brief exchanges used to signal someone rather than converse. Further investigation uncovered that he had purchased several surveillance tools, including motion detectors and portable lights, indicating he had been monitoring the warehouse closely. This raised the possibility that he had noticed Stephanie near the property, especially if she had visited repeatedly. However, what troubled investigators most was the discovery of a financial trail showing Cole had been receiving unexplained deposits from an overseas source. These payments were consistent with unreported imports, strengthening the theory that illegal goods were being smuggled through the warehouse. If Stephanie had captured images revealing this operation, she may have unknowingly threatened a network much larger than one individual. Cole, facing potential exposure and severe consequences, could have felt cornered. The lack of Stephanie's equipment found with her body added another layer of suspicion. If Cole had discovered her taking photographs, he might have taken her camera or memory card to eliminate evidence. Yet the images remained intact in her apartment, implying that she transferred them before something went wrong. This meant someone had been monitoring her activities closely enough to know she had the photos, but did not realize they were already saved elsewhere. By the time investigators concluded their analysis, Cole had emerged as the primary suspect. His access to the warehouse, his inconsistent records, his late-night appearances, and the link between Stephanie's photos and his operations all pointed to a motive. Stephanie had captured something she was not supposed to see, and the photographs threatened to expose illegal activity tied directly to him. The case was no longer centered on an isolated crime. It had expanded into a web of hidden transactions and dangerous secrets that someone had wanted to keep buried at any cost. The discovery of the hidden letter pushed investigators to re-examine every detail of Stephanie's final days, searching for a clearer connection between her handwritten warning and the images she captured. When the forensic team began decoding the underlined words from the note blue, boxes, night, watch, behind, they noticed an immediate overlap with the clues found in the photographs. The blue paint matched the warehouse doors. The boxes appeared in several images. The night visits were confirmed by timestamps, and the word behind echoed the shadowy figure and suspicious movements around Stephanie when she took the photos. It was evident that she had written the message as a coded summary of what she witnessed, possibly as a personal reminder or a last attempt to document her fear in case something happened to her. While examining the letter even more closely, analysts discovered partial fingerprints on the bottom edge of the page. The prints were clear enough to identify, and when entered into the system, they created a breakthrough that shifted the investigation. The fingerprints matched Cole Havers. This discovery placed him in direct contact with something belonging to Stephanie. Cole had repeatedly denied ever meeting her or knowing who she was, yet his fingerprints were now found on an item she had hidden with extreme care. This contradiction strengthened the evidence against him and proved he had been closer to Stephanie than he claimed. Armed with this new information, investigators obtained a search warrant for the warehouse. During the search, they located traces of paint thinner identical to the chemical scent found inside Stephanie's apartment. The formula matched almost perfectly, suggesting the same type had been used in both locations. This raised chilling implications. Whoever handled materials in the warehouse had likely been inside Stephanie's home as well. The assumption that the killer moved between the two places grew stronger, reinforcing the idea that Stephanie had been targeted for what she discovered. Inside the warehouse, the forensic team found additional clues. Small flecks of blue paint were scattered near the side entrance, matching the fragments found on Stephanie's clothing. Deep grooves in the floor suggested heavy boxes had been dragged repeatedly through the building, indicating constant movement of undocumented goods. On a work table near the back wall, investigators found a wiped-down surface with faint outlines of rectangular shapes places where boxes once sat. Although the labels were missing, residue tests revealed traces of materials commonly associated with illegal trafficking. It was clear that Stephanie had stumbled onto a high-risk operation far beyond her understanding. As detectives analyzed more of the recovered items, they discovered a set of tire marks near the rear of the warehouse. They compared these with marks found at the forest trail where Stephanie's body had been discovered. The patterns matched the tires of Cole's SUV. Even though this alone was not enough for an arrest, it deepened the suspicion and connected Cole not only to the warehouse, but also indirectly to the scene where Stephanie's body was placed. Despite all this, one element still troubled investigators. The warehouse security footage showed movements at times when Cole's phone records indicated he was miles away. This discrepancy suggested he wasn't working alone. Someone else had been present with him, following his orders or collaborating in the illegal operation. The pattern of activities, especially the late-night visits, hinted at a second figure playing a major role. This meant that the case was far more complex than initially assumed. The discovery of the letter and its decoded message, therefore, did more than link evidence. It revealed a network. Stephanie had unknowingly stepped into a dangerous environment, recording details that threatened not just one person, but an entire operation. Her attempt to protect herself through the hidden note became the very key that allowed investigators to piece together the truth. With each clue aligning, detectives moved closer to uncovering the identity of the person who had been moving in the shadows alongside Cole, someone whose involvement would take the investigation in an unexpected direction. As investigators pushed deeper into the logistics of the warehouse operation, the possibility of a second person grew too strong to ignore. Phone records, security footage inconsistencies, and the odd timing of vehicle movements all pointed towards someone working with Cole, someone who had access to the warehouse and shared responsibility for whatever was being stored and transported through it. Detectives began revisiting interviews, this time analyzing minor employees, delivery drivers, and even people who lived near the industrial area. Most offered little insight, but one former worker mentioned something that caught the team's attention. He recalled a man who frequently accompanied Cole during late-night visits, someone quiet and reserved, who rarely spoke and who seemed uncomfortable being noticed. His name was Dean Halstrom, a former warehouse technician who had abruptly left the job months earlier with no explanation. Digging into Dean's background revealed several inconsistencies. He listed multiple short-term jobs, all ending abruptly, often without official resignation. His addresses changed frequently, and he had no stable contact information. The more investigators looked, the clearer it became that Dean lived a transient lifestyle, drifting from job to job while maintaining strong ties with people like Cole, who operated in gray areas of the industry. Financial checks showed Dean received small, regular payments from Cole's company, despite no longer being employed there. This discovery raised immediate suspicion. Why would a former worker continue to receive money unless he was still involved in some off-the-record capacity? The investigation took a significant turn when forensic analysts examined the shadow captured in Stephanie's hurried photograph. While the image was too unclear to identify a face, the outline of the figure and the shape of the individual's stance bore a closer resemblance to Dean than to Cole. Dean was taller, slightly leaner, and had a pronounced shoulder angle, something visible even in the blurred silhouette. This detail hinted that Dean may have been the one following Stephanie during her visits to the warehouse, watching her from a distance and reporting back to Cole. Investigators then reviewed highway cameras near the forest trail where Stephanie's body was discovered. While no direct footage showed the crime being committed, one camera captured a vehicle similar to Dean's old truck passing near the area around the estimated time her body was placed there. The vehicle had mismatched panels and a dented rear bumper, details consistent with Dean's known truck. This connection, though circumstantial, strengthened the theory that Dean played an active role. Meanwhile, new forensic findings emerged from Stephanie's apartment. When analyzing the faint paint thinner smell, investigators discovered a secondary residue mixed in a compound used in industrial cleaning, one found most commonly in warehouses and shipping facilities. Samples taken from the warehouse table matched those from her apartment exactly. This detail revealed that whoever entered her home had been in the warehouse shortly before. Cole's fingerprints appeared on the hidden letter, placing him in contact with her belongings, but a new set of unidentified prints on her doorframe suggested someone else had stood at her doorway. They matched Dean. The evidence built a chilling narrative. Stephanie had likely been followed home after visiting the warehouse. Dean, acting either out of loyalty to Cole or out of his own fear of exposure, had monitored her movements. He may have entered her apartment under the pretext of retrieving evidence, but his actions escalated far beyond that. The quiet, overlooked technician had become a key figure in the operation, someone more willing to act in the shadows and take decisive steps to eliminate threats. Investigators realized Stephanie had not only discovered suspicious activity, she had uncovered a partnership, one where Cole handled the business front, while Dean managed the hidden, more dangerous side. Together, they formed a system built on secrecy and mutual protection. Stephanie's photographs and coded note had unknowingly exposed both of them. As detectives moved closer to identifying the complete picture, they prepared for the final step, confronting the men who had tried so desperately to keep their operation hidden and who had silenced Stephanie to protect it. In the final phase of the investigation, detectives prepared a coordinated plan to apprehend both Cole and Dean, knowing that any misstep could give them time to flee or destroy remaining evidence. Surveillance teams were positioned near Cole's office, while another unit tracked Dean's movements through his sporadic routine. Unlike Cole, who maintained a predictable schedule, Dean drifted from place to place, often sleeping in his truck or staying in low-cost motels under different aliases. This unpredictability forced investigators to remain alert, ready to move the moment an opportunity appeared. The break came when analysts completed a detailed review of the warehouse ledger Stephanie had photographed. Hidden between ordinary entries were coded transactions that matched specific dates when large shipments arrived late at night. The labeling indicated scrap materials, but the quantities and values made no sense. Cross-referencing these entries with Dean's payment deposits revealed a direct connection. Each suspicious shipment was followed by a deposit into Dean's account. This confirmed he was not a passive helper, but an active participant benefiting from the illicit operation. Investigators concluded the warehouse was being used to traffic stolen industrial components, items that could be quietly removed from supply chains and sold to buyers without raising immediate alarms. As detectives connected the final dots, they received confirmation that Dean had returned to the warehouse after weeks of avoiding it. The timing was crucial. They suspected he had grown nervous since Cole's arrest and was searching for remaining documents or materials that could incriminate him. A tactical team surrounded the building while investigators inside searched for a safe way to enter without alerting him. When they finally moved in, they found Dean attempting to burn a box of files, the flames already consuming several folders. Firefighters stopped the spread quickly, but some documents were lost forever. Still, enough remained intact to solidify his involvement in the trafficking network and connect him directly to the financial records Stephanie had uncovered. During the forensic review of the remaining files, investigators discovered a chilling piece of information. Dean had kept detailed notes on people who had visited the warehouse unannounced, including delivery drivers, inspectors, and last on the list, Stephanie herself. Her name had an asterisk beside it, followed by a short phrase indicating she had seen too much. This confirmation eliminated any lingering doubt about how deliberate the decision to target her had been. It also demonstrated that Dean had taken a methodical approach to eliminating risks, making him far more dangerous than initially believed. With both men in custody, prosecutors built a solid case using the combined evidence: Stephanie's coded letter, her photographs, the warehouse logs, digital transactions, and the forensic ties between the crime scene and the industrial facility.